Hi, as part of our work of representing the voice of business, I am delighted to welcome you to this, a new video series entitled Talking Thames Valley. We've invited respected journalist Andrew Peach to have conversations with a selection of our members who represent industries across the wider region and businesses large and small. They're going to share their stories of the challenges and opportunities that they and their clients are facing. And also we're going to be using it as part of our wider campaign to ensure that in an election year that the Thames Valley business community is recognised for its contribution to the wider challenges that the UK faces. Sit back and enjoy.
So let me just ask you to start the recording by telling me who you are and what your role is.
Yeah, so I'm Ashley Wheaton. I'm Vice Chancellor at University College of Estate Management. That's kind of Reading's other university. We serve the built environment industry, so all of our students are studying for professional qualifications across built environment disciplines.
What state would you say the construction industry is in at the moment?
I would say it's a pretty challenging one. I think it's suffering from a labour shortage. I think some of that is in a post-Brexit way. Lots of the trades that were serviced previously by workforce from Europe are not here anymore. I think they're suffering some of the same cost pressures that other industries are facing in terms of just cost of living crisis. But of course, they're also struggling with materials as well. And there are some significant rising costs of materials. So I think construction is really challenged by having the work to do. I think the work is there, but pricing it in a way that is satisfactory for customers is becoming increasingly challenging.
And some of those pressures must be particularly acute round here, where the cost of living is even higher than elsewhere in the UK, where the labour shortage is more acute than it is elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure that's the case. I don't have live examples, but I do know that construction has relied on subcontractors, and they, of course, will travel as far as needed in order to undertake work. So I suspect if we were to do the analysis, we'd find that workers are travelling increasing distances into this region to undertake that work, simply, as you say, because of the cost of living issues of being here or residing in this region.
Having said that, at least there's demand. You know, the one thing that this area, the Thames Valley, always has is demand, economic vibrancy in excess of other parts of the country.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true, and I wonder in some respects whether we shouldn't think about the question the other way around and say what is the unfulfilled demand holding us back from? Economic growth is dependent, isn't it, on these construction projects happening, and if they are hampering those businesses' ability, to grow or to add, economic growth to the region, then I think that's a problem that we probably need to understand a bit better.
One thing people in many sectors have talked to me about is trying to skill people up, trying to educate and skill people to go into particular sectors. I know this is something you feel very strongly about, obviously, with the role that you have in this part of the economy.
Yeah, no, I'm hugely passionate about, and I've just literally come off another call looking at exactly the same thing. I think that there are a couple of things at play here, aren't there? Number one is, what does the region need? There's been some brilliant work done on local skills improvement plans, looking at regional requirements and looking at regional provision. But I think the challenge is a bit further up from that, which is I think we've got some national problems as well. And I think my feeling is we'd be better to solve those at a national level, and then that would allow the regions to nuance that and make it really fit for their own regional purpose, rather than solving issues that everyone's trying to solve, across multiple different regions. And, I think that's where we really need a view from the top, an industrial strategy that brings us a national skills plan, assesses supply and demand, and then helps to invest in all of the right areas that, as I've said several times now, will fuel economic growth. I think that's critical.
We're heading into a general election campaign, and my sense is that the rights and wrongs of construction, of building, house building particularly, I suppose, is going to be a very live issue. There's going to be a lot of argument about this, whether that's helpful or not.
There definitely will be. And of course, there are multiple dimensions, aren't there? But, the reality is that the gap in provision of residential homes is still there. We can't build them fast enough. Being able to build them fast enough is a function of a number of things. Skills is probably the biggest thing. from professions that are required, such as surveyors, required to do the work, and then of course the trades that are required to actually build the homes themselves. Planning often comes up as a problem as well, and that's a sort of a local authority issue in building the right level of capacity for planners, to approve, and provide consent for some of those developments to be built. So there's a lot of factors at play here, but skills will be a big challenge if we are to get to anything like the supply of new homes that we're talking about.
But you talked about the need for a strategy. One of the effects of a pre-election period is no one quite knows what the strategy is going to be. There's a lot of talk about competing ideas, but until we get to the other side of an election and know who's running the country, no one can be sure about strategy and plan accordingly.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and yet I suppose my contention is that there's supply and demand here, isn't there? The demand will come from the strategy. It would be lovely if we had a vision for Britain, an industrial strategy that we could translate into our region and really make a difference. In the meantime, of course, we have a number of instruments that are extremely valuable in the supply of skills. And I suppose I'd urge any future administration to carefully look at what we do have, and not to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater and assume that it's all broken, because actually I think in the education sector there's lots of things that work really well. They might need a bit of finessing. Apprenticeship levy is a great example in apprenticeship agenda, and I would just urge caution in changing too much until people have really understood what works and what doesn't.
And what about government thinking, broader thinking being joined up? Because in many sectors, often the problem is that the conversation between different government departments, between different public bodies, between government and industry doesn't feel very joined up.
No, well, there's a good reason for that, because it isn't. I'm smiling because I think it's a fabulous question, Andrew, and it's one of my particular bugbears. There are unintended consequences of policy and departments that are not joined up. Sometimes those unintended consequences are all right, and sometimes they're really harmful. And if we don't have, for example, a house building strategy that combines with an education strategy to supply the skills, one of those two will fail. I'll give you one very good example from a couple of weeks ago. The NHS was in the news, wasn't it, for saying that it's prioritizing net zero over people's lives. And actually what was in the story is, in some NHS trusts, they've invested in electric ambulances. Well, there's a great example of the intersection of two things that, frankly, that isn't the NHS's net zero problem. We'd all excuse them a few more CO2 emissions, wouldn't we, for a fleet of, internal combustion engine ambulances that got there on time. So, that's a problem, isn't it? When you don't quite have the things joined up, you get some serious unintended consequences.
And this is one of the things that the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce is always trying to do. Is trying to do a bit of joining up locally, at least, between stakeholders here.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And I think actually this region's got such a fabulous opportunity, hasn't it? Given some of what is already in place, it's really well connected. It's got brilliant infrastructure. In fact, it's got better infrastructure with the Elizabeth line now than it's ever had. It's famous for the sort of M4 corridor and the sort of golden triangle between that and the M40. And so I think the foundations are already there. My personal hope is that it can sort of launch itself against whatever this vision for Britain is, as a region that can be right at the forefront of driving that vision and making it a reality. Whether that's on the green agenda or whether it's to do with other things, I think time will tell. But I think we're fabulously placed to play our part in that.
You seem a very optimistic guy. You feel like you started by saying that the construction industry has got huge challenges, but my sense is, talking to you, that you still feel optimistic they can be solved.
Yeah, and the reason I say that, Andrew, is I think all the pieces of the puzzle are there. I think the issue we all face is they're deeply inefficient. They're not used very well, and consequently often, the sum of the parts adds up to a lot less than we need it to. And so, what I'd ask for, as you say, is that joined up thinking regionally, but also at a national level, that allows us to use our limited resources in all of these areas to much greater effect. Some of that is about planning, some of it is about pulling up nationally what really is nationally, allowing regions to focus on that. But I think my optimism comes from a belief that there is enough in the system to deliver. We just have to learn to do it, more effectively through a more sort of joined up approach.
Really interesting chatting, Ashley. Thank you very much.